How you doing, buddy, on a Black Friday? Good to catch up with you.
I'm doing well.
What we do want to know, John, is some of the news coming out of Eagles camp today, including a surprising name on the injury list. What's going on with Trey Burton?
Yeah, he was out of practice with back spasms. He started practicing this week, and then all of a sudden Thursday, Thanksgiving, he was held out of practice, and now he didn't practice again. So he's going to be questionable for the game on Sunday. Zach Ertz claimed he was going to play, but I'm not so sure. Generally, when you don't practice on Friday, you're probably not going to play in the game. Now, exceptions can be made, but usually for star players or veterans maybe who don't need as much practice time. But when you're talking about still a relatively young player like Trey Burton, who's the third tight end, to me it's probably leaning towards he doesn't play because he wasn't able to practice. But Doug called both he and Bo Allen game time decisions.
Also, some news about the kicking situation. You heard Damian in the update, but we'll let you share a little bit more about that as well. What's the latest with Jake Elliott?
Yeah, he's finally out of the concussion protocol. He's been practicing all week, so I think there was a good indication he was going to be fine. But really, if you go all the way back back to Tuesday, because it was a bit of a strange week, because of Thanksgiving, they opened the locker room. Jake was in the locker room Tuesday. Wasn't allowed to speak to us because he was still in the concussion protocol, but he seemed fine. And then he was out of practice kicking field goals by Wednesday. So no surprise, he's going to be the kicker on Sunday. And I think Camus Grugier-Hill's pretty excited about that because even though he did a good job, he probably wants to put the kickoffs in the holster.
Now, John, I do want to talk about something that I picked up on when I went to the Arizona game as a fan. So Eagles-Cardinals as a fan, my brother's seats are on the opposite side. And on one of the kickoffs, because there were a lot in that game, you remember how many times the Eagles scored, my sister-in-law and I both noticed that the kickoff didn't make it to the end zone. And then she said, actually, I think that might be by design. And Doug talked about that today.
Yeah, there's a number of it because Jake's got a very, very strong leg. He could probably get a touchback just about any time he would like. There are times the Eagles will try to kick it directionally and very high to try to pin the team inside the 25 because, remember, it comes out there now if you do have a touchback. But that's dangerous in this league. And I don't advocate that, and I see it time and time again, not just with the Eagles, and it happened to them in the opening kickoff in Dallas. That's what they tried to do, and all of a sudden you get a big kickoff return. The Cowboys are in scoring position right away. Now, obviously it didn't matter because that's a horrible football team, but ever since they made it easier for the kickers to get touchbacks, and in essence they're really trying to take that out of the sport, really. There's so few kickoffs. When you do try to use that strategy, it's almost like the coverage guys are so used to the touchbacks that, to be honest, they let up a little bit. They're expecting the touchback, and then they're told, hey, go cover this kick, and all of a sudden you got a big kickoff return. So I think one of the positives of having a strong-legged kicker is the touchback, and I think the Eagles would be better served just to use it, but at times they do use the strategy. And as I said, on the opening kickoff against the Cowboys, it came back to bite them, not only because of the long kickoff return, but also Jake made the tackle and got the concussion.
Right. Okay.
So I think they should rethink that.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles Insider. You can read his national column, Extra Points, on our website, 973ESPN.com. And, of course, he is a must-follow on Twitter at JFMcMullen. John, we had Jeff Dickerson on earlier from ESPN 1000 in Chicago for our outside view, and he takes the point that the Bears' biggest offseason blunder might not have been all the money they paid Mike Glennon, but the fact that they let Alshon Jeffrey walk. How do you think Alshon Jeffrey's fit in with the Eagles, and do you think the Eagles certainly are already thinking long term, like, because this was a prove-it deal. Are they trying to figure out how they can keep him around?
Well, it is interesting. You already have one report that says the Eagles aren't thinking about bringing him back. I think that's probably sort of not really directly coming from the Eagles organization. I haven't heard anything bad coming from anyone in Philadelphia about Alshon Jeffrey. On the other hand, he hasn't lived up to expectations from a numbers perspective. But he's fit in very well in the offense. He's coming on the last couple of weeks. I think if you were able to get a long-term deal, it would help the offense. His second season with Carson Wentz, the chemistry would be better. So that's one to keep an eye on. As far as the Bears, I can't compare it to the Glenning signing because of a number of things. They actually, before the season, had two good young receivers, at least projection-wise, when you're talking about Cam Meredith, Kevin White, but Kevin White's always hurt. So I think that's a little revisionist history to say it was a mistake to move on from Jeffrey simply because you did have people in place. And I always talk about it. You can't legislate injuries in this league. You can't say, well, we're going to keep three high-profile guys in case one gets injured. Sometimes it doesn't work that way because you have to pay a lot of money to keep certain players. And Alshon would be in that category, even though he didn't get as much money in the open market as he expected. So I think if you look at that Glennon contract, I mean, that's atrocious any way you slice it. And on top of it, think about this. How much they paid Mike Glennon. The Vikings paid Case Keenum $2 million a year. And the Bears could have had Case Keenum for $3 million a year. So that's a bad decision.
Yeah, they pulled that plug after 4 regular season starts. Jeff Dickerson also did say about Alshon Jeffrey, because I guess he's been around him and now you've been around him, that he may not say much. He's not necessarily like a warm and fuzzy kind of guy to go up and talk to in the locker room, but that he is a guy that he said, I wouldn't call him a malcontent. I guess you share that same view of Alshon?
Yeah, exactly. He's almost the anti-wide receiver because you think about high-profile wide receivers in this league. They're all divas, and they're all boisterous, and they all like to talk. He's the exact opposite. But by everyone's estimation, he's been a great teammate. He doesn't complain when the targets aren't there. Certainly some receivers would. A lot of receivers would. So I think he's been a great teammate from that standpoint. He's a very good player to have around. And yeah, it is almost a little bit strange to have a guy who is so understated at that particular position. But that's just his personality, and that's probably not going to change no matter where he is.
And a guy, obviously, it sounds like he helps the other receivers out. He's good in the room, things like that. Now, you have an article on our website talking about older veteran players helping younger players about Jason Peters, and that he's trying to stay involved and help Big V become Big V instead of Big Bust. And tell us a little bit about the Jason Peters-Big V relationship and what you've learned about that.
Yeah, well, I think if you go all the way back to when Jason Peters was injured in the Washington game and it was being carted off, I mean, that's just the type of guy he is. Obviously, he's in pain from a season-ending knee injury, and he's trying to give advice on how to block the Redskins. And you know, I often talk about it. I compare it, you know, Jason's blockers in the back right hand, way back in the corner of the Eagles locker room, and he's almost holding court back there. He's got so much respect with his teammates. Part of that is the fact that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday, so you have that aspect, and people respect him for his ability. But also, he is such a respected veteran, and the fact that he's willing to help people, and he's still texting V and calling him, and giving him advice. And Jeff Stoutland, when we got to talk with the assistant coaches during the bye week, he mentioned he's almost like an extra assistant with Eugene Chung. He's very, very involved. He wants to be involved, and it's sometimes it's difficult for injured players because it's sort of if you're not there, you're not a part of the team. But that's not the case with Jason Peters, who I would say if you're talking about the most respected players on this team, it probably starts with Malcolm Jenkins and Jason Peters.
Shame on me, John. How could I do this interview without saying that your appearance on the show is brought to you by Geno's, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. Visit Gino Pinto on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton. Visit them online at GinoPinto.com. Geno's, the winemaker's choice for 50 years.
All right, John, so now we got business out of the way, and we get back to the Eagles talk, which you mentioned the Jason Peters and the offensive line. We just saw on last night the fact that Tyron Smith, he comes back, but the offensive line still struggles for the Cowboys at times, and he had a horrible holding call on the touchdown run. We keep hearing, John, everyone keeps using, the Cowboys are injured. Well, the Eagles are injured too. How much does that point to the fact that the Eagles were much more prepared for their injuries this year, whether it was Peters, Hicks, or these other guys, than other teams have been over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it speaks a lot to the coaching staff. It really does, in getting guys ready, because I know there was a lot of angst. We just talked about Jason Peters. There was tremendous angst when Vaitai was forced into the lineup at left tackle. He's been lights out, and really the 3 games he's played have been blowouts. The Eagles have won going away. And then you talk about Jordan Hicks in the middle of that defense. The quarterback, Nigel Bradham, has taken over that role and done it seamlessly. And that speaks just to how much Jim Schwartz has got him prepared to handle all the communication you need on that side of the football. And then there's the Darren Sproles of the world. And I think maybe the most underreported injury of them all, because people never think about special teams, is Chris Maragos, who's one of the best 3 or 4 special teams players in this league, a tremendous leader. He goes down, and you have players like Camus stepping up, not only as the emergency kicker, but as that great coverage guy. It's been amazing to watch the Eagles patch holes, and there are certain teams, and you mentioned the most obvious one, the Cowboys, who've had a lot of difficulty doing it. But I think if you look at the 2 top teams right now in the NFC, they both have that theme. The Vikings have been able to do it as well, losing their quarterback and also Dalvin Cook, who was having a tremendous rookie season. So generally, good teams figure out a way, and there's a reason those 2 teams are at the top of the NFC.
John, I think some people have had the question lingering out there. Yes, the Eagles are a better team than the Bears. Yes, the Bears struggling, their rookie quarterback, all the things are out there. But some people are trying to quantify this as a possible trap game. Is this really a trap game, John, or are people just overanalyzing the obvious?
They're overanalyzing. And hey, we've talked about trap games a lot this season, which I think points to 2 things. When you talk about trap games this much, you're talking about a really good football team because they're always expected to win. And I think it goes all the way back to that Chargers game. And the Eagles have proven time and time again they're not going to overlook bad teams. And this is not only a bad team, it's a one-dimensional team. And they do one thing really well. So if you want to sit there and talk about their running game, it's tremendous. It's versatile. They have a great interior of the offensive line. And, hey, if they get going, I could see them being the first team running for 150 or so yards on the Eagles. But the bottom line is they have a rookie quarterback who's not ready to play. And at some point, Carson Wentz is going to wear you down. And there's no way the Bears can keep up with the Eagles scoring and offensively. So this is, you can call it a trap game all you want. All that means is a bad football team's coming in and you're expecting the Eagles to not take them seriously. And that's a possibility. I call them human nature games. The Eagles might take the human nature route and say, this is going to be easy. And then you have something that like happened last week in Dallas. And you kind of sleepwalk through the first quarter, maybe the second quarter, but at some point, you're just that much better, and you're going to pull away.
John, the was now say the Eagles defensive end Vinny Curry was named the Week 11 NFLPA Community MVP following his second annual Thanksgiving Rush program provided 200 families in need with Thanksgiving meals. And the reason I bring it up is because the Eagles actually have been lauded nationally on different programs, John, for the fact that there is a lot of guys in that locker room who do a lot for charity. You know, obviously Malcolm Jenkins gets a lot of public image because of all what's been going on with, politically and socially, but there seems to be a lot of guys in that locker room, John, that do a lot for charity. And I think that in this world where we talk so much about the negative guys and the guys who do bad things, that the good guys don't get enough publicity.
Yeah, it's one of my pet peeves because if you think about this league and all the issues they've had and all the black guys going back to whether it's Ray Rice or Greg Hardy or Adrian Peterson or Ezekiel Elliott most recently, in some of the things they were accused of doing in certain instances. And the NFL as a whole tends to get that black eye. And there's so many players that do so much for the community. We've talked about Chris Long a lot this year. You mentioned Vinny. You mentioned Malcolm, who's just tireless when it comes to. I mean, he's got a full-time job. He's a great football player, and he's going back to Harrisburg and D.C. and trying to do things to help his community, and nobody talks about it. And this happens in every single NFL city. And that's why I always, the hot takes of the world, and everyone likes to say, well, the players are going to strike because of how Roger Goodell treated Ezekiel Elliott or somebody else. Understand there's 1,700 players in this league, and less than 1% get in front of Roger Goodell for personal conduct issues. So if you think 1,680 are going to strike because of a knucklehead like Ezekiel Elliott, ain't going to happen. The vast majority of the players in this league do really, really good things, and you're right, Josh. People should emphasize that more.
John, a couple of national news items. We heard today that Jalen Ramsey looks like he's not going to play this week. He has stated he's not playing. Obviously, he's part of that Jaguars defense. How important is he to that defense, considering that there's a lot of talented players, where it's Calais Campbell or Barry Church. There's a lot of guys on that defense, but is he the linchpin?
Well, he's very good. He's already a top 5 corner in this league. I can't say he's the linchpin because they have so much talent, and I've argued that nobody knows it, but it's a combination of being so bad for so long and drafting so high, and also paying a lot in free agency, and they just have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball, the Jaguars, and they're obviously going to make the playoffs, and they might even surprise some people because they're going to be a tough out. As bad as they are offensively, that's how good they are defensively. He's part of it, but I don't think he's the only part of it. You mentioned Calais Campbell. He's been maybe the best free agent pickup in the entire NFL this offseason. They have so much talent, as I said, from drafting high. And they've also hit on second-rounders like Tevin Smith and Miles Jack and free agents, Barry Church and A.J. Boye at the other corner. They're just loaded on all 3 levels.
John, a couple more injury thoughts from you. It looks like that the Panthers have officially activated Greg Olsen. He'll be getting a chance to play this Sunday. How important is he for the Panthers in their hunt for a playoff?
Well, he's very important. He's one of the best. He's right there as one of the best pass-catching tight ends in football. But you have to, be wary. Ron Rivera said he's probably going to ease him back into the lineup. He's probably not ready to handle the normal repetitions he would. But, that's been Cam Newton's security blanket. You see what Zach Ertz means to Carson Wentz. Greg Olsen might be better than Zach Ertz. That's how good he is catching the football. So, obviously, that's a huge get back for the Panthers, and they'll get more and more. And it's interesting because he was doing TV, and then he's ready to come back. So some of the teams, Minnesota and Atlanta specifically, were a little upset that he was doing TV because they thought he could get a little extra scouting in on the defenses he might be facing.
Yeah, because he couldn't do that on his own time, right?
I know. It's always overblown, but
yeah.
It's like a lot of Eagles fans were worried, and this amazes me, by the way, that the Saints signed Dexter McDougal. Like he was going to give all Jim Schwartz secrets to the Saints. I think Sean Payton's fine without Dexter McDougal.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles Insider. Remember John's appearance brought to you by Geno's, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. Visit Geno Pinto on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton, online at genopinto.com. It's Geno's, the winemaker's choice for 50 years. So we'll wrap up by talking Bears and Eagles. John, I haven't seen your prediction yet. I was digging through a few of your articles there, but what are your thoughts on score prediction for Sunday's game?
Yeah, I don't see how the Bears even stay competitive. As I said, if we revisit this 2 or 3 years down the line, maybe Mitchell Trubisky is an NFL quarterback and a good NFL quarterback. Right now, he's not. They've scaled the offense back. Now, they've increased it a little bit, and they keep putting more on his plate from week to week, so it's better than it was when they only let him throw it, I think, 7 times against Carolina. But this is what Jim Schwartz salivates over. A rookie quarterback who's not ready to play. The Eagles win this one going away 31-13.
31-13. John picks a palindrome. Of course, that's the same number backwards and forwards, or same word like Otto or Madam on Madam. Good stuff out of you as always, John. We will catch up with you soon here on the program. Thanks so much, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Peter.